प्रोग्राम सोशल रिव्यू का एक और एपिसोड के साथ मैं हूं आपकी मेज़बान समीर नवाज़। अपने आज के इस प्रोग्राम में हम बात करेंगे दो मौज़ूआत पर। सबसे पहले अपने आज के इस प्रोग्राम में हम बात करेंगे इमिग्रेशन के हवाले से, क्योंकि हम देख रहे हैं कि अमेरिका में बसने वाले दीगर ममालिक के तमाम तर लोगों को यहाँ पे इमिग्रेशन के हवाले से जो मसाइल दरपेश हैं वो जो बाइडन तर्ज़ हुकूमत में, जो बाइडन इंतज़ामिया भी अभी तक उनको हल नहीं कर सकी है और वो हमें जो है वो पेंडिंग का शिकार नज़र आते हैं। तो इमिग्रेशन के जो मसाइल हैं इस हवाले से हम अक्सर व बेशतर अपने प्रोग्राम में मदू करते रहते हैं। इमिग्रेशन अटर्नी है जॉनथन, जिनसे हम जानने की कोशिश करते हैं कि इस वक्त अमेरिका में इमिग्रेशन के जो मसाइल हैं उसको किस हद तक हल किया जा चुका है, कितनी तेज़ी से इन केसेस को सॉल्व किया जा रहा है, कितनी तेज़ी से लोगों को यहाँ पर नेशनैलिटी के मसाइल हल किए जा रहे हैं या इमिग्रेशन से मुतालिक और जो दीगर इशूज़ हैं वो हल किए जा रहे हैं। आज भी अपने इस प्रोग्राम में हम इसी हवाले से कुछ बातचीत करेंगे और जॉनथन ही हमारे साथ आज के इस प्रोग्राम में मौजूद होंगे। उनसे हम बातचीत करेंगे और जानेंगे कि इस वक्त अमेरिका में इमिग्रेशन के हवाले से क्या सूरत हाल है और मसाइल किस हद तक हल हो चुके हैं और जो बाइडन इंतज़ामिया उनको अपने आइंदा हुकूमत के दौरान कितनी तेज़ी से हल करने की सलाहियतें रखती है और जो उनकी पॉलिसीज़ हैं वो उस पर अमल दरामद यकीनी बना रही है। प्रोग्राम में जॉनथन से गुफ्तगू करेंगे और सवालात के जवाबात लेंगे, लेकिन एक ब्रेक के बाद। वेलकम बैक नाज़रीन। प्रोग्राम में एक बार फिर आपको खुशामदीद कहेंगे। जॉनथन इमिग्रेशन अटर्नी हमारे साथ मौजूद हैं और हम कुछ बातचीत कर रहे हैं इमिग्रेशन के मसाइल के हवाले से। Jonathan, what is going on with ICE detention under Biden administration?
So right now under the Biden administration, ICE is not as strict as the Trump administration. They're not going on as many raids as you can imagine as Trump administration was. And right now ICE is a little bit more willing to work with individuals to release them on their own recognizance, as opposed to keeping them detained compared to the Trump administration. So although ICE still isn't great, it's a little bit better than it was during Trump.
Jonathan, are there any potential revision to ICE detention?
Yeah, so there's a lot of proposed measures that congressmen are taking, because when someone gets detained in ICE, a lot of the times the person has not committed a crime. And they're getting placed into jail with people who have committed crimes. Being here unlawfully, it's an administrative violation. It's a violation against the immigration codes. It's not a criminal violation. So there's been a lot of attorneys like me and other attorneys that we've been pushing back, and we've been advocating for alternative resolutions to putting someone in jail. And one resolution that the Biden administration is trying right now with a lot of these individuals who are coming over from Mexico across for the border claiming asylum is they're doing this house arrest type detention, where you could be in the comfort of a home. And it's not just people at the border. If it works there, it would be everywhere else. You'd be at the comfort of the home, whether you have some sort of an ankle bracelet to monitor you, then at least you're not in jail. You could eat your own food, you could live with your family, you could be in your own comfort. You just can't leave the general area that you would live in. And I think that's a good solution to keeping someone in jail.
What happens if someone is detained in ICE detention during COVID and they have pre-existing conditions?
So right now we're a little over 2 years into COVID. There's people still getting sick, and there's people that have pre-existing conditions. So there's been recent cases that have come out and have said that actually if you are of a certain age, or if you have a certain number of medical complications or pre-existing conditions, and it's unsafe for your health to be into ICE detention, you actually qualify to be released from ICE detention, even if you wouldn't normally qualify for a bond. If you were mandatorily detained, there are certain situations where you could qualify to be released on your own, and that's something that you should definitely explore with an attorney over. If you have someone, or if you know someone that's in ICE detention and they have pre-existing conditions, that's definitely something that you should contact someone for.
What's going on at the US-Mexico border right now?
So there's a lot of people coming over still. There's measures that are trying to be taken to close down that border. However, the government is trying to do the best it can in terms of the number of people coming in. And as I explained earlier, the alternative to detention type programs of like house arrest, that would help with the population that they have right now in the detention centers at the border, because they are highly populated and you don't want to populate certain areas because of COVID. So there's still people coming in. Republicans want to work as hard as they can, and actually I think Democrats as well. They want to secure the borders to a certain extent, and then also if people are claiming for asylum, they can still come over if they have credible fear.
Jonathan, I hear immigration reform may be coming back on the table in Congress. What would it look like?
So immigration reform is actually, for one of the first times, it was being offered by a Republican. And basically what that proposal is it would say that the dreamers in DACA, people that are already here and qualify as dreamers and can have access to work but did enter unlawfully, those people would get amnesty and those people would get full rights to a path to citizenship. And then the other individuals that are here unlawfully will have to meet certain requirements in order to be eligible to have a green card. So you would have had to live here for a certain amount of time, you would have had to pay your taxes, you would have had to not be in criminal trouble. And I actually think that that's a good middle ground solution to dealing with the problem that we have right now, where we have a lot of undocumented individuals in our country who it's hard for them to find work because they don't have work permits. And then it's hard for them to pay taxes, even though they use social, they use the subway, they use the bus, they use the hospitals, they'll use the social services, but they're not making enough money to pay taxes. They're making as much as they can just to keep themselves afloat. So I think giving access to people who don't have work authorization, giving them access to work authorization, and giving other individuals a path to legal residence, I think it's a great idea.
Can someone get a special visa to attend the funeral of his or her close family member in United States?
So that could be tricky. It would be called Humanitarian Parole, and it's granted in certain limited circumstances where it's an emergency type situation. So we would have to qualify for that exception. The way I've seen it work is, for example, a former client of mine had a child custody issue, and that person was out of the country. So we had to get that person back into the country because he had a legal right to be in court for the custody determination of his child. So in that situation, we were able to have the person come in under humanitarian parole and go to that hearing and then go back home. For a funeral, I'm not sure if it would rise to that level of humanitarian parole, but it depends on the circumstances. So that's definitely something to consult with an attorney with, to see if the specific facts of that case could rise to the level of humanitarian parole.
Do you think immigration reform will ever become reality?
I don't know if it's going to be anytime soon, unfortunately. Biden administration, they've talked a lot before he got elected. Now there's some murmurs, and they're talking a little bit right now as well. I just don't know if it's going to happen in this administration, and the way things are going, I don't know if there's going to be another Democrat that's going to come after him. I would assume that it would definitely be in a Democratic administration, but not in this one.
Any update on pending asylum cases?
So asylum cases, they've changed. When Trump came in, he did first in, first out. Now Biden hasn't explicitly said what his rationale is, or what his method is. He said that they're no longer doing first in, first out, but there's a lot of people that have actually still been waiting. Now, depending on the nature of the delay, you could do a federal lawsuit to the government saying that you're unlawfully delayed in that case. Like these are the types of cases that my firm does. So if you really do feel like you're at a delay where it's 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, then that's definitely something that you could either contact me or contact another attorney about, where you could do it would be called a mandamus. It would be a federal lawsuit to show that the government has not done their job and that they're unreasonably delaying your case, your right to an immigration benefit in a reasonable amount of time. So other than that lawsuit type path, there isn't much more that you could do. It's just sitting and waiting, unfortunately.
Jonathan, can someone become citizen without taking knowledge test?
The civics exam, which I'm assuming the question is like the history exam. So the answer is no. Now, if you are of a certain age, you don't have to do the English exam. So if you are of a certain age and you've had your green card for a certain amount of time, okay, so if you're over the age of 50 and you've had your green card for 20 years, or if you're over the age of 55 and you've had your green card for 15 years, you actually qualify to not do the English requirement, which is the writing and reading. You still have to do the civics exam, the history exam. So, but you could do the history exam in your own language. That's the benefit. There's one small exception that said if you have a medical issue. So if you have some sort of medical issue, whether it's memory loss or it's early stages of dementia, or it's something that affects your mind where you can't read and learn and take an exam, and you go to a doctor and the doctor gives you a medical exemption. At that point, you do not have to take the civics exam. That's really the only way that you could get around studying and taking for the exam. If you have a condition where you go to a doctor and the doctor says that condition has a connection, it has a nexus to you actually physically studying, learning, and writing the exam competently, then you could actually get by that. And I've done that for a lot of my older clients. I've had clients in their 70s, 80s, 90s who they just don't have the mental capacity anymore to study and learn for a test, so that we go to a doctor and then we get them a medical exemption, and then we work with the officer so that the officer understands that they have this medical exemption, and then the rest of the interview is fairly easy after that.
Can you explain conditional green card?
Okay. So a conditional green card gives you all the rights and benefits as a regular green card. Now, the difference is that you have to go back to the government and you have to prove to them that you are still in that relationship. Let's say you get your green card. It's only going to be a conditional green card if you get your green card within 2 years of your marriage date. Okay? So if you get married to someone and within 2 years of that day you get your green card, the government wants you to come back 2 years later to remove the conditions on your green card. And then they would give you a permanent green card. And all that does is it shows the government that, look, I'm still married to this person, I'm still living with this person, I intended to stay with this person, I still am with this person. Or you go back to the officer and you explain it didn't work out. For whatever reasons, it didn't work out, but we stayed with each other for this long. These are our documents as a married couple. This is where we live. This is the utility bills. This is our joint bank account. So basically, all the removal of conditions is proving to the officer that you've remained in that relationship for an additional 2 years. And then once they believe you on that, then they remove the conditions of your green card. Other than that, traveling, working, every other benefit that you get as a green card holder, you have it. It's just more temporary. It's a temporary green card. And if you've been married with someone for over 2 years and then you get your green card, you get your permanent green card. You get your 10-year green card. You do not have to go back and remove your conditions.
تھینک یو سو مچ جوناتھن افتالیان امیگریشن اٹرنی ہمارے ساتھ موجود تھے اور ہم نے کچھ بات چیت کی اس وقت امریکہ میں امیگریشن کے صورتحال کے حوالے سے یا امیگریشن سے متعلق جن لوگوں کے کیسز اس وقت پینڈنگ میں ہیں اور جو کیسز فائل ہیں وہ کتنی تیزی سے حل کیے جا رہے ہیں اور جو کچھ جو بائیڈن انتظامیہ نے ان کیسز کو حل کرنے کے لیے یقین دہانی کروائی تھی وہ اس پر عمل درآمد اب تک کتنا یقینی بنا چکے ہیں اور اگر اس میں کسی قسم کا کوئی تعطل ہے یا کسی قسم کی تاخیر کا شکار ہیں یہ کیسز تو اس کے لیے کیا سولوشنز پیش کیے جائیں گے اور کیا حل نکالا جا رہا ہے. اگر آپ بھی جوناتھن افتالیان سے اس امیگریشن کے حوالے سے کچھ مزید معلومات جاننا چاہتے ہیں یا کچھ کیسز جو آپ لوگوں کے اس وقت پینڈنگ کا شکار ہیں یا کیسز فائل ہوئے ہیں لیکن اس میں تاخیر ہے تو اس حوالے سے کوئی بھی معلومات اگر آپ کو درکار ہوں تو آپ بھی ہمارے ای میل ایڈریس info@vosa.tv پر رابطہ کر سکتے ہیں. اپنی کیوریز ہمیں بھیج سکتے ہیں, کوئسچنز ہمیں بھیج سکتے ہیں, ایشوز ہم سے جان سکتے ہیں اور ہم کوشش کریں گے کہ جوناتھن سے اگلے پروگرام میں ان تمام تر ایشوز کے اوپر جوابات لے سکیں.